Okay, now our next consideration is very simple, and it's tied into the previous talk that we did within this Kriya Yoga Meditation Beginner's Guide. So you might want to go back and review the previous video on communing, learning to have communion with the wholeness of life. But our next step, which ties into this, is learning to treat everything you do as a spiritual practice. Not just your meditation, not just your yoga, not just your reading of spiritual literature, but learning to, when you're playing, however you play, whether you're gardening, playing a musical instrument, playing football, whatever it might be, whatever your play is, how can you start to see this as honoring your soul's expression in this world? Because your soul didn't come here just to tie itself up in knots in yoga practice or to sit still in meditation to get away from everything. That's not why it came here. It came here to experience. It came here to love. It came here to be. It came here to participate in this drama. So why not treat your play as spiritual practice? Now again, for you, you're going to have to figure out what that means. Everyone's going to relate to these things differently. You just need to learn to get yourself in a mindset that when you're getting ready to go into a situation when you are being playful, how can you treat that as though this divine consciousness is flowing through you into that experience? And maybe it's not so much an issue in Eastern cultures, but in Western cultures that's been heavily influenced by Christianity, the idea of play is often problematic because most people who've been indoctrinated through Christianity have a deep sense of guilt. Not all of them, but I think those of you who know what I'm talking about will recognize this. And so when it comes to things like play, or when it comes to things like enjoying oneself, that brings up ideas of being a heathen, essentially. Being a part of life is looked at as a bad thing. So we want to learn to celebrate life, because as we discussed in the previous talk, everything is ourself, everything is this divine consciousness. So how can we learn to allow ourselves to let that joy of playfulness come through us into this world? And just imagine how that will affect not only your consciousness, but the consciousness of the people around you and the consciousness of the world, if we were given permission to enjoy our play in the world as though it was divine. Just imagine how that would transform yourself, how that would transform the people around you, because that resonance of your state of consciousness is going to affect and infect the environment around you. So if we walk around, as many of us do, with a sense of guilt about enjoying life, or the sense of guilt about not working hard enough, or the sense of guilt about having the capacity to be able to play, well, that infects the environment with this sense of guilt, this sense of lack of joy. And why should we deny that? If we are living a wholesome life, if we are not injuring other people, if we are simply exploring these facets of ourselves in this world through play, you need to ask yourself, what do I need to do? How do I need to get my mind right? How do I need to reorganize my mind, my thinking processes, so that when I play, I'm playing in a divinely joyful way, if you want to think about it like that, whatever your hobbies may be. The same thing with work. Now with work, sometimes we don't like work. Sometimes we'd rather be doing something else. Sometimes we'd rather be out in nature, hiking, or again, playing, whatever it might be. But we have to remember that there is a cycle to life, and there's work and there's play. When a plant grows, it's got to force its way out of the ground. It's got to do all the work to become strong, to reach up to the sun, until it can finally play and bloom and enjoy itself, expressing itself as a flower, creating seeds for the cycle to occur again. But now what if, whatever our work is, we stop judging our work in regards to this is menial, this is mundane, this is pointless, and realizing that it might not be well recognized, it might not be glamorous, but it's part of the self, the cosmic process occurring. And so if you did not do your job, if everyone in the world who did not have a glamorous job did not do their job, would we have the capacity to play? Think about that. Think about your hobbies. Let's say you like playing board games. If the people who created those board games, cutting out the pieces or creating the machines to create the pieces, if they did not do their job, you couldn't enjoy your board game. You couldn't enjoy that divine play. So in a sense, they're working for you. On the other side of the coin, maybe you're doing something that seems boring, that seems menial or mundane, but maybe part of what you do is serving to allow another aspect of yourself, another person, to also have the freedom to play. So we need to start looking at this idea of work and play in a little bit different fashion and realize that there's a time to be focused, to inspire others if possible, but that our value in the world is not based on what other people think or do. Our value is simply that we are fulfilling our role. Some of the most invaluable people in the world are famous people, really. I mean, what do? They just take up your time and distract you. It's really silly. And not all of them. Some people, they've developed into a famous figure because they love what they do and they would do it anyway. And they are simply just great at what they do, so they become more well-known. But that's not the drive, meaning that most people who are extremely good at what they do and are well-known because they're good at what they do, they would do it if they were successful or not, because they love it. The fame aspect of it, the validation aspect of it, just is a secondary thing for them. So we want to avoid judging our work based on validation, based on the sense of fame, or if people know us or not. And we need to simply just ask, are we fulfilling our role? Because that is part of your duty in this world. Your duty is to play. Your duty is to support the consciousness of yourself and the people around you through your work. I can't remember the exact quote, but I think I recall, maybe it was an autobiography of a yogi, or maybe I heard it elsewhere. I think it was Sri Yukteswar said to Yogananda, when Yogananda wanted to just be a renunciate and not engage his dharma, Sri Yukteswar said something like, as long as you breathe the free air of this world, you're entitled to participate in it. All right, so we have to keep this in mind. Other things to consider about making every moment a spiritual thing. Sleep, sickness, loving, all these things when you are sleeping, as discussed in the book Kriya Yoga, Vichara, there's a chapter on Yoga Nidra, or yogic sleep, how to start to develop that, because you can also start treating your sleep as a spiritual practice. You can learn to meditate while you sleep, believe it or not. You can learn to stay conscious while you sleep, or just rest in general. You can allow yourself to rest, even if you don't get into the lofty practice of Yoga Nidra, but letting yourself rest. That is a spiritual thing, because your body needs to rejuvenate. Night occurs, day occurs. There's always these cycles occurring, and the rest is not a bad thing. So giving yourself permission to rest can be a very profound spiritual practice, instead of, again, feeling guilty for taking rest. You shouldn't feel guilty for that. You need to listen to your body. Even if your body needs a lot of rest, there's a reason for it. So we need to honor and acknowledge that. Otherwise, we can drive ourselves into the ground. Sickness. When you get sick, well, again, as we discussed in previous lectures in this series, sickness is an aspect of consciousness. If we can honor that as a divine state, we are healing that division between when I am well, I am healthy, and I am holy. When I am sick, I must have done something wrong. Get those thoughts out of your head. Just because you're sick doesn't mean you've done something wrong. Now, of course, it may be that you have abused your body. Sure, okay. Have you done something wrong? No, you were exploring consciousness, and the result, the consequence of exploring consciousness in the way that you have been, is simply that your body needs to detoxify itself, so you get sick. Or it may be that you're just tired and you need a rest. You've been working too hard. You've burnt yourself out. So again, that rest period will be very important. Sometimes sickness comes upon us for that reason. Other times sickness occurs because your time's up. You're just done. Maybe you don't like that. Maybe you're not interested in that. But that is a reality. Death occurs. Sickness occurs. Sickness leads to death. But the more that we create these boxes around the ideas of sickness and of death and saying this is spiritual, this is not spiritual, the more divisive our consciousness becomes and the less we're able to actually see what the wholeness of life is about. And these are all hard topics, so I'm talking about them within a few minute period of time and acting as though they're just the easiest things to figure out. But it's not. When sickness occurs, when death occurs, you have to go through the long, hard process of contemplating how is it true that this is an aspect of divine consciousness? How is that possible? How is this pain? How is this uncertainty? How is this deep loss? How is it possibly an aspect of divine consciousness? And it is. That's all I can tell you, is that it is. But you cannot get that experience, that true knowledge, understanding, unless you personally spend time being okay with these things, exploring them, and questioning them yourselves until you get the direct experience of the information, of the knowledge, of the wisdom of it. All of us will get it when we die anyway, but it would be better if you were consciously aware of it before you go. That way when you come back again, should you decide to come back again, you will retain it. But anyway, point being that these things that we consider to be unspiritual or problematic, you need to start changing your mindset about them. Contemplating how to change your mindset about them. Because if you force yourself to change your mindset about them, you're kind of falling in the realm of the believer and the person who's hoping that sickness and death is a spiritual thing and is a part of God and divine consciousness, versus actually having the true understanding that this is part of the process. And that's what we want, the actual understanding, not the belief or the hope. And to get the understanding requires hard work. It requires that you really look at these issues yourself and see if you can find how life, death, happiness, sadness, sickness, health, play, work, how all of them, how they're all related. You have to do that yourself, which is why meditation is so helpful, because it prepares you for the capacity to contemplate these issues until you have no more issues to contemplate. And that's really the key. Love is another one. We have all these platitudes like love yourself, love your neighbor, love everyone, blah, blah, blah. Well, love is a divine quality, as everything is a divine quality, as you're probably getting the sense from these talks. But when you love someone or something, can you do it simply for no other reason than you want to generate and express and share that love? Not because you want the other person to love you back, not because you want something from them, not because later on you want to say, well, I loved you and I forgave you, so therefore you should love and forgive me. But just because you see the beauty in them, anyone, anything, as a part of this wholeness of life. If you can love in that way, then you're making that love, you're making that moment part of your spiritual practice. And that's another hard one, because again, most people are trained to love their tribe, to love their family, to love the people that share similar beliefs. But it's not human nature to love those of differing views, because it wasn't really helpful way back when humanity was just trying to even exist in this world. The better your tribe thrived, the better you did. But we're trying to go beyond this animalistic tendency, this tribal tendency. And again, when it comes to love, it doesn't mean that you approve of or that you have to engage in the same practices that other people engage themselves in. But can you love them because they exist, because they are an aspect of yourself in some way? They're in your environment, they're in your awareness because they're an aspect of yourself. And again, it doesn't mean you support them. You can love the alcoholic without buying the alcoholic drinks or being codependent, giving the alcoholic a ride home, right? You can love people that share different political views because they're human beings, because they've developed those political views, because they have become who they are because of their own psychological complexes, how they've experienced life. And you just can't relate to it because you've not experienced life that way. If you experienced life the way they did, you would think just like they did. But we also have to remember that it goes both ways, meaning that the way they think of you is actually how you think of them. So you think they're crazy, but in their consciousness, their observing consciousness, you look equally as strange. So, who's right, who's wrong? Well, at the end of the day, the only thing that defines who's right and who's wrong in relationships and politics in the world cultures is simply who has the majority, really. That's what it comes down to. Because God flows through everyone. It's not always what we would want, of course, but it seems to be the way it goes. So these are considerations to really flesh out, to unite all aspects of your life, beyond meditation, beyond reading spiritual literature. These are the real, true issues that you, as a Kriya Yoga practitioner or someone who's trying to develop spiritual sight, these are actually the real things that you have to work on. Learning to meditate, that's a very basic thing. And of course, just like in all situations, sometimes, we have to have people in kindergarten who are learning the basics, and they will slowly mature. But if you're watching this series, then that means that you're probably at a state where you need to consider something a little bit more beyond the basics. You need to consider the real situation of self-manifesting as life. No longer are you allowed to divide your life into spiritual and anti-spiritual, or meditation and not meditation. You just can't do it anymore. If you do, then you're rejecting your current responsibility. You are now called to attend to the basics, to keep yourself psychically, energetically, mentally, emotionally healthy through your meditation and hatha yoga practice. But that is only the foundation for you to do the real work of being this life. And when you can do the real work to be this life, no longer do you concern yourself with life or death or enlightenment in 2 lifetimes or 60 lifetimes, because you realize you are life. And that life flows through everything, every change, every day, every night, every sleep cycle, every waking cycle, every bodily transition. You realize you are that, and it's always the same thing. It's always the same kind of principles to be worked out or understood or realized. And once you understand them and realize them, you are free. And that's it.